Welcome, and thank you for joining us as we embark on a journey to discover how our resort community has become an innovative technological center. I am Mary Czar, Executive Director of the Boca Raton Historical Society and Museum.
And I'm Gianna Passanelli, Marketing Director for Crocker Partners and owner of the beautiful park that you see behind us, Boca Raton Innovation Campus, former IBM campus and birthplace of the first personal computer. Together, we have partnered to bring you Boca Raton Tech Talks, which aim to dissect the evolution of technology and innovation in Boca Raton.
We want to answer the question, why did these companies choose Boca Raton as their home base? Our conversation, a three-part series, will unfold the strategy behind some of Boca Raton's most impactful innovations, and we hope that this will mean something really special for the future of technology in our community.
All four cameras are a go. I am rolling. Stand by. All right, so let's go in 3, 2.
Welcome to the Boca Raton Innovation Campus, the epicenter of the golden era of personal computer. My name is Pete Martinez, and I'm surrounded and honored to be with the luminaries of innovation in Boca Raton. Harold Brown, Pedro del Sol, and Scott Adams. They all have unique histories related to innovation in Boca Raton from many different perspectives and many different angles. Let's go back to the period from 1980 to the year 2000, 20 of the most innovative years in the history of the world. We'll start off with the history of IBM here in this facility. In this facility, it's typically known for the original IBM personal computer back in 1981, but there was so much more going on here. Robotics, manufacturing, mini computers, satellite networks, all happening here. And the personal computer is typically known as a product, but it led to a whole development of a family that now consists of servers and laptops, and the original smartphone also being developed here in Boca Raton. But we often forget all of the related technologies that came about because of the personal computer. For instance, the reason you have processors very small right now in your phone is primarily because of the volumes that were driven by the personal computer. The second is, think of the screen in your smartphone right now. At one point in time, we had to flip the coin and say, we're going to cross over from the CRT tube displays to the LCD displays. Because of that is how we drove the volumes down on the technology. Think of the wireless technology. Think of the internet. If not for personal computers, the internet would have never happened. What would you connect? So we're very fortunate right now to be able to tell the story in hindsight of the impact that we had on industries across the world. We'll start off with Pedro. Pedro del Sol was both an executive at IBM, but then transitioned as a leader in industry without leaving Boca Raton. Pedro, give us an introduction to yourself and why.
Well, looking back, I get kind of sad and happy that this building's still here. It's a beautiful place. And I was fortunate enough that when I graduated from college, I came directly to IBM. I was really liked this company, and I was fortunate enough to be hired. But even more interesting is that I was part of what I refer to as the personal computer revolution, which you were talking about. So I spent 19 years as part of that. When I left, and it wasn't so much because I wanted to leave, but when I left, I was managing worldwide. I was the director worldwide of personal computer, the commercial desktop, which was the largest growing segment in the marketplace. We were selling about $2 billion. Then IBM decided to move this mission to Raleigh, and they also moved the operating system to Texas. And it was a very difficult time for my family, whether we would stay or go. But at the time that this was happening, I was recruited by a recruiter that was looking for an executive for Sensormatic. I didn't know anything about Sensormatic, and I started to do a lot of research. And it turned out that while IBM was the leader in the personal computer, Sensormatic was the leader in security and surveillance equipment. Which was also quite interesting is that they were the darling of South Florida from a stock standpoint. They, for 36 consecutive quarters, they had met or exceeded their revenue. So people in the community were buying the stock, and they were making money off of the stock. So as I was doing my research, I said, wow, this is a good, I'm going to go from a company that was like 60 or 70 billion to a $1 billion company. Would I make that transfer? And I'm glad I did. The technologies were completely different. The business models were completely different. The buying cycle were completely different. So as we talk today, I can share and I can bridge the difference between a personal computer productivity tool and Sensormatic, which was more into the security.
That's awesome. By the way, Pedro and I go back a long ways. We used to carpool together from Miami when we started here our first year in Boca Raton. So great memories. So Harold, Siemens has been in Boca Raton for a long time. And Siemens is one of the largest innovators in the world. Tell us your personal story with Siemens and Boca Raton.
Yeah, thanks very much, Pete. Yeah, so the good news is that we developed a system which connects your computers and all the other devices today. So without connectivity, nothing would happen. So I'm referred to IoT, the Internet of Things, whatever. We developed very early, of course, a mobile system and also a carrier-grade system in Germany with Siemens. That was the headquarters. But then our US facility was here actually in Boca Raton. We had up to 4,000 people here in different areas. So carrier, so the fixed line organization, the mobile organization, the enterprise organization, and also the mobile phones. So we had all the different organizations here. And I was brought up in Germany, and I worked for Siemens 23 years. And at one point in time, they sent me to Asia to develop the country or the area there. And then suddenly I got a call to come over here to lead their organization as their president and then later on president and CEO. So what we developed is a public communication system. So information communication networks it was called here. And so I came over from Asia. And then I took over the organization here in mobile and carrier and enterprise. So yeah, and we were responsible for the US. But the developments, what we did here, actually had for Siemens an impact globally. So not a lot of people maybe know that. Just a couple of 100 yards away from here, we developed the first triple play service. So nobody thought about triple play. So to provide to the subscribers TV, data, and also voice. So it was almost impossible to think about that we get through the cable also voice through the modem. And we did develop that here. And our first customer was Cablevision in New York. And we make a big splash, and then all the cable companies came one after the other. And then we transitioned from a TDM kind of system to an IP system, which is dominant today, right? So that was done here. So, and we influenced the headquarters with 7,000 developers to make sure that we, and they do also, develop IP systems going forward. Lots of real big innovations are done here, and of course I'm very proud to have led this organization until Nokia came along and we made a merger, and then later on Nokia bought the entire network unit. So
what an amazing story. 4,000 employees, and this is one of the stories that we rarely hear about, and one of the things that we wanted the opportunity. One of the things that is very common to all of these panelists is how much they're involved with the community. Originally, I met Harold at Florida International University. We were both in the advisory board, and we were developing a lot of the students, a lot of the faculty, a lot of the programs. But it shows the professionals that are here in the community and how involved they are with both academia as well as the next generation?
That is absolutely correct. We met as when I was the chairman of the School of Science and Technology at the FIU in Miami, and that was a wonderful time, of course. But then later on, I did also contribute to the FAU here, and today with a new founded company, I'm actually in the tech runway with my new company, right? And yeah, so we're giving back that what we developed here and the knowledge, because a lot of these people are still here in the area, and there's a lot of intellectual property, right, and intellectual capacity in people. So we need to make sure that this will go again into new companies in this new area, and make sure that we get back to innovation, innovation companies here, and that's what I'm trying to do.
So Scott, whenever you think of innovation and serial entrepreneurs, you think of Scott Adams. The three of us actually grew up in corporate world. Scott was a serial entrepreneur from the beginning. So he was born in Gainesville, moves to Boca, and creates history. Scott.
Yeah, so let me explain how I actually came to Boca Raton. My roommate from another school in Georgia was moving to South Florida and to come to some school I've never heard of called FAU. So I said, you know, I'm getting tired of being up here. I just didn't really feel like it was I fit in. So we came down here for spring break and we had a good time. And back when they had spring break down here in Fort Lauderdale. And then so I moved to FAU and with my roommate, and we finished our college here in 1985. And another thing that happened is, you know, my father worked for IBM up in North Florida and that region, and he sold the big mainframe. So he got a free PC from IBM because he won it, because he sold so much, or met his quota. So he gave me this computer and said, here, I don't know how to use this thing, nor will I. So I brought it with me to school here with my 5 1/4 floppies and my 1200 baud, the modem. And I took some computer programming classes at FAU so I could dial into the Florida Fern network and do my programs remotely. I was one of the few students who could do that at the time. So that was my first intro to the IBM world of learning how to use DOS and logging into what's the precursor of the internet in a way. So so after I graduated from college, I had some great connections with IBM. So I took their test, and my dad's friend was the one doing the hiring, and I didn't do very well on what IBM was looking for in employees. So I wasn't hired at IBM. So I was really upset because I thought my career was over. That was what my path was, because I could work on computers with IBM was what I wanted to do. So then I quickly learned, you know, I think I'm going to have to do stuff on my own and be an entrepreneur. And I always had some entrepreneurial desires. So, you know, from there, I did a wide variety of things. But then in 1995, so 10 years later, I formed a company called Highway Technologies with a co-founder of mine, and this is when the internet, the commercial internet, was just forming. So we created a web hosting company, and this was sort of like pre-cloud, where we had to make our own cloud on the server. So we were allowing small companies to create their own internet presence with a .com and their own email, so you didn't have to have a server in your office. So we were sort of the early pioneers to develop that shared web hosting, which today is, you know, AWS and Microsoft Azure that's exactly what they do in a very large scale. So we had an office right down the street, maybe a mile from here, and we were growing so quickly. We needed a place to expand and grow, and we were starting to talk to the Bell companies, providing the service to them. And I said, we need something big. When they come in and see us, I want them to see what we're thinking, that we're just not a little small startup company. So we ended up we were the first company to move in to the center here, to the offices right on down the street. And we leased 70,000 square feet. So we were able to reuse the old IBM raised floor. They let us keep it. So we put our own data center. And so we, this was in 1997 or 98, probably about that time when we moved in with our first company to move in to brick.
That's awesome. What a story. And you look at the innovation and what force. I had the complete opposite experience with IBM. I graduated from electrical engineering. I had no background in computers. I get an offer from IBM. And now what have I done? And by the way, the guy sitting next to me on the first day is Dr. Dave Bradley. So he's starting off with a PhD, and I'm going, I'm ready to hand over my first check here. I'm a fraud. I don't belong here. I'm ready to go. 32 years later, I was able to retire, and it's fascinating. Collectively, we have over 100 years of working in Boca Raton uninterrupted. Harold, what made you want to stay in Boca?
Yeah, so I see the potential here with a lot of companies, and I'm involved in some of those companies. And I did also found another company in 2018. As I mentioned before, the intellectual capacity of a lot of people is still here. That's number one. And of course, we know a lot of people here which worked for us in the past, but we know also a lot of people worldwide. And we know a lot of people in the US in particular, to bring them back here and start innovation projects again. So the possibilities are here. The buildings are here, the surroundings are here. I still remember in the 2000s when I was with you at the FIU, and I mentioned there, well, we have really a problem here because the engineers, they go all to Silicon Valley, they go all, west, and nobody stays here. And so I mentioned that in one of our meetings. 3 days later, I got a call from the governor. This that was in the area of Jeb Bush. So Jeb Bush asked me in a telephone call, and I was in a business review session, and I think, oh no, my secretary is kidding me because why should Jeb Bush talk to me about that? And then the first thing he said, okay, are you keeping our Floridians here, or are you sending them to Boston or to Silicon Valley? And what can I do to help you? And I said, my biggest problem is to get IP engineers, right, to develop a telecommunication system with IP systems. And then, he helped us a lot, to recruit and get people back here. And they are still here. And now you have maybe seen in the news that a lot of people from Silicon Valley are leaving towards Austin, Texas, leaving towards Denver, Colorado, leaving towards east. And there is a possibility for us as well to get some of this cake. On the other side, there are a lot of people here. So what we did is we founded a company called Guidant, which we focus on building a software platform to monitor and control autonomous vehicles. And this autonomous vehicle can be a car, can be a robot, can be a delivery system, can be a drone. And think about it as you would sit in a kind of airport controller kind of tower. Not that we control airplanes, we control autonomous vehicles. So, and that's what we're showing here, and that's what we're working with people here to develop that, and we hired engineers to work on this sophisticated software platform using AI, artificial intelligence algorithms. The potential is here. That makes me stay here and contribute, to the community here.
This is fascinating because what you see is executives reinventing themselves. The technology changes, but the fundamental concepts of development, of a business model, of a business plan, and driving the business hard is the same.
And on top of this, Pete, you have so many connections to venture capitalists all over the world, and particularly also in the US and in Sand Road and others. But you can also pick up the telephone and talk to the former AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, telecommunication executives. It's all the time a telephone call away for us.
Mm-hmm.
This is fascinating, and they helping.
Right. Very cool. One of the best executives I ever saw at IBM actually driving quality and precision was Pedro. Pedro was the manager for a long line of products as part of the personal computer business. Pedro, why don't you tell us through some of the products that you had?
Well, you talked about a lot about IBM, and I want to talk a little bit about Sensormatic. Because going to Sensormatic, I almost had to re-engineer myself. It's a whole new, different business cycle, new technology. Let me compare what I did at IBM to Sensormatic. I worked on the personal computer, which I consider a productivity tool. For those that are buying a PC, it's easy. You want to buy a PC and there's a quick ROI, here's what I'm going to use it for. Sensormatic is a whole different business. Somebody buying a product from Sensormatic is not to increase their business, but to maintain their asset, is to stop shrinkage. So I had to learn that, and I had to learn that everything that I learned at IBM applied to a whole new technology. Let me explain the products they had. Very low engineering in some respect, but very high demand in the marketplace. They had 3 product lines: the electronic article surveillance. These are the tags that you will see when you go to Macy's in Bloomingdale or Home Depot. That's to prevent somebody from stealing. Again, preventing from shrinkage of your capital. The second product line, which I ran, I was Vice President General Manager, was the video. Now, video at the time, believe it or not, was all VHS. I know you were working toward digital recording and all that, but when I first joined, it was all VHS. This is at casinos. Our major market was casinos. Every gambling table is monitored by some form of surveillance. If the camera or matrix switcher or anything goes down, that gambling table shut down. Back in the late or mid to 1990s, we were trying to get into the school business, the school systems. But of course, the school system has limited budget. They'd rather buy a computer than a surveillance equipment. And then we got Columbine, where kids got killed. And right after that, we get a phone call, and now we went into that market, selling surveillance. And now, soon after that, every campus, every colleges would have some form of surveillance, whether the camera, the matrix switchers, and all that. The other one, which hits home, because in 1996 I was able to participate in the Olympics. Not participate, but we provided the equipment for the 1996. At the time I was managing access control. Each athlete had an access control in order to get in and out of the village where they were housed. So as they went through the pedestal, they also had to put their hand on a hand geometry, so it would compare to ensure that if you lost your badge, you couldn't get in. So you went in. So you would say, well, that's simple technology. No, it's complex technology, because it's not only the biometrics, but it's also the software. But think about this: what is the size of the hand of a basketball player compared to a gymnast? Again, we could keep an inventory of every athlete as they enter and exit the village. What happened? There was a bomb in the common area. There was no surveillance in that area. The next day we get a call. We need surveillance camera and equipment and matrix switchers and all the things that we can put in all the different venues. So all of a sudden we have cameras on lampposts. We have cameras on blimps. So going from a productivity company or productivity product to one that people need for self-preservation or for preservation of their assets. So the whole product cycle was completely different. So that's what I said. I had to reinvent myself from what I had learned 20 years at IBM to be able to run their second biggest division. Since then, we were toward the later time before I left, because we got bought out by Tyco, we were doing more of the integration where we had smart tags with video and access control, where we can now have video and be able to program it for certain events. Instead of having a person in front of a camera or a monitor, and if something happened yesterday, they had to get a VHS tape, look at it, monitor it to see when it happened. Now you can program for events. So really interesting for my profession to go from one to the other and be able to grow the company in a new industry.
That's amazing, and what we're learning is all of these stories that never came about and were never told, now we have the opportunity, thanks to the Historical Society of Boca Raton, to actually bring to life all of this legacy here of innovation. But you're a perfect segue in terms of surveillance to the guy next to you. Scott now is in the surveillance business. Why surveillance and why in Boca?
Well, once we sold Highway Technologies in 2000, and then I was sort of at a crossroads myself, and I'm 35 years old, and I got to figure out, well, what am I going to do next? So I thought I was just going to just play golf and retire. Well, learned very quickly. That was probably the most unhappy period of my whole life. I was like depressed. I almost needed to go get some help. Some psychological help, but then I realized I need to be busy. So I got involved in, into starting to be an investor and other entrepreneurial endeavors. And I rode through a whole wave of up and down, with all the crashes that have happened in the tech world. But then I decided that I think I'm going to be happier if I get involved in fewer deals, but I'm going to invest in myself and get involved in the companies and help lead them and manage them and grow new opportunities rather than being a professional investor. So my current venture I'm in right now is called STRAX Intelligence Group, and we've started with drones and providing a platform for bringing in drones to law enforcement for responding to different types of critical incidents. And then since we've become, we morphed into more of a common operating platform to bring video, drones, helicopter feeds, sensors, artificial intelligence, because the problem is now that all these cameras have been installed and all this technology is there, how can a human possibly see thousands of cameras at the same time when an incident happens? And we've seen it by reviewing just our local incidents between at the Fort Lauderdale airport and at the school. When something happens, it's the chaos and all the systems get overloaded. The radio systems can go down, all of even the local circuits. So there is a need of controlling that data and getting it redundancy in place as well to the right people at the right time. And being able to channel that information and collaborate with multiple agencies doing mutual aid as they come in to the scene. And so that's the problem we're trying to solve, is now how do you disseminate all this information and bring the specific cameras that you need to focus on the incident that's at hand, and how it could be changing too.
That's amazing. One of the things that we all have in common is we all had offices here in the brick at some point in time. Right. I think you mentioned you had 200 employees here.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Okay.
In the second floor.
And Pedro and I spent, things. We used to talk about if ever these buildings were sold by IBM, what would you do with it? So we said it's either a school or a prison. Okay, that was the layout. To the management and the executives of the brick, you give them a lot of credit because they redefined innovation, and innovation in a space where collaboration became a fundamental. So we're all involved now in development, reinventing ourselves and doing it. Personally, I'm taking what I knew of technology and applying it to the health arena, primarily artificial intelligence, genomics, cognitive development, Alzheimer's, dementia, and such. The last time I had a biology class was 52 years ago. So now you start thinking of reinventing yourself. One of the things that Harold mentioned, which is so key, is the network of executives, the network of peers, the network of academics that we have to surround ourselves and make us feel comfortable about the next company that we create is very key. So one of the things that has been a continuum for all of our stories is it was never a doubt that our next business was going to be here in Boca, and we've been very fortunate now that the BRIC provided this type of platform for us to develop. Harold, what's next for you?
Well, let me connect to the break, right?
Yep.
So we visited already a couple of offices here because it's a highly secured business. We have data centers here, right? And we have also kind of an autonomy on power here. And when I see what's coming up there in transportation, right? Last mile transportation, not the last mile connectivity, right? Which we did many decades, you know, to connect the homes or the people on the last mile. Now we're looking at, you know, how can we develop a zero-touch deliveries with robots or with land-based vehicles, right? Like the Starships and the Neuros and so on. How can we actually deliver goods to people, right? So. And they need to have a kind of a monitor, and when they run into trouble, we need to take also control over this vehicle. But there's no space for putting a person in that vehicle, so you need to do it remotely. So what we're thinking about here in BRIC to put here a remote monitoring and control center for autonomous vehicles. So we are talking, of course, to the management teams, and I visited a couple of times here. This is perfect for us, right? So I contribute a lot of my time to companies, advising them or being in a board of some companies on a global scale, so 6-7 companies on a global stage, to be connected to the people and to the executive because they can help all the time. And of course companies here in Boca, whether this is in the mobile space like Airspan, whether this is in the upcoming service on demand space in telecommunication, which is Cirrus Core Networks, or other companies. I'm trying to combine them, for example, with Guidant, which is the autonomous vehicle company, and see whether we can also create something what the industry didn't see yet. For example, the biggest thing for autonomous vehicle is the latency. How long does it take from, you know, seeing an object to make sure that the guy in the remote monitoring and control center sees or to react? The latency is important. Well, we develop a system, I think, and I make a press release very soon, that we have the lowest latency now in the industry connecting to autonomous vehicles. So but you know, that's all here because there's a lot of telecommunication experience here, right? So that's what we tap into, making again, or creating companies, creating a lot of patents, creating innovation, and on a high sophisticated level.
Pedro, after his mission with Sensormatic, he becomes the director of a clinic, a medical clinic for the underprivileged. Why?
When we got the buyout from Tyco, I was fortunate enough to receive compensation. So I decided to give back to the community, and there's an organization in Boynton Beach where they provide medical, free medical and health to the underprivileged. It's all run by volunteer doctors. No one pays to be seen. To put it in perspective, 25,000 patient visits go there compared to 20,000 patient visits that come to Boca Hospital. And so I was doing some volunteer work, and they were in dire need of a leader to come in there because they were really struggling. So I was able to come in again using my background and be able to make it functional. Believe it or not, I changed just the flow of how to see the patients, and it was a tremendous reward to me. It wasn't a technical thing, but it was a reward to me. Although I did bring some technology in there because everything was being handled, all the patient records were being handled by hand. So I brought, with the help of IBM, I got Pete. I called Pete. I need some computers, so we started to keep all the records, digitize the records. But I did that for a few years, and then I realized that the nonprofit sector is a key sector in our community. So I started a new company called Nonprofits First. What that company did was it provided back office support to nonprofits that couldn't, they had the right mission, but they couldn't do it. So we provided IT to them. We provided CPA back office support. We provided education. So again, taking my technology background, taking my leadership background, being able to help nonprofits in the community become more efficient in what they do. And again, I stayed within Florida. But I do want to come back to you, Scott, because as you were talking, I was kind of smiling because I left Sensormatic 20 years ago. And our vision was video at any time, anywhere, by anyone. And we weren't there. I mean, the bandwidth through the network was impossible. We couldn't, it was like the rover and the moon. By the time a person walked, and we had cameras in a parking lot, and the low lighting was very difficult, and by the time a person moved, you couldn't track them. So that was our goal, that was our vision, and I could see it coming. I mean, it was almost like I could touch it, but we're not there yet. And back then it was DVD RAM that we were storing it. And listen to this. In a casino, they record 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on VHS. So that means that every few hours they're taking out a VHS, they're putting in a new one. And you know who was in the control room looking at all this? Ex-convicts. The ex-convicts are the ones that are sitting there monitoring this thing. So if you wanted to know what happened yesterday at 9 o'clock, you got to go look at the VHS and sit there in front of this and go forward, or fast backward until you find it. As opposed to having flags and having alarms and saying, okay, if these events happen, you get alarmed, so you don't have to sit there and do all that. So I am really happy to hear that you're doing some of the things that you were explaining actually before we sat down here. I call a friend at Sensormatic, and now it's Johnson Controls, and they were explaining to me, I said, what are you doing these days? And they said, we have this great camera system whereby when you walk into a building, they can detect your temperature, and your temperature is posted on the forehead as you walk through. They can't record it because it's against HIPAA. But right now, in today's environment, which means that technology is following the needs of what's happening in the world. So anyways, I commend you for what you're doing. It brings happiness to me that technology is moving on.
Scott, one of the perspectives about you that I admire a lot is your dedication to the community, and specifically the students that you mentor. Could you say a few words about that?
After I had the financial opportunity to do something once I exited, one of my first endeavors or my first contributions was to made a contribution to FAU to endow the Adams Center for Entrepreneurship to help other entrepreneurs who had a mutant gene or a gleam in their eye, whichever you may want to call it, of wanting to take that chance. And so I just that was the first thing. But then I always still try to be able to be accessible if a new entrepreneur wants to reach out, and I always try to make time just to listen and try to give them some advice on similar stories about what I had to do, or just so they can be thinking for themselves, because I can't make decisions for them. It's just a very rewarding to give back and see someone else and not expect any compensation or financial gain, but just to do that because you wanted to.
I've seen Scott in action. It is world class because it's just providing a level of guidance, challenging them to get better. You never hand out anybody a dollar. You actually make them earn it. You challenge them and say, make yourself better, and you're the best at that. Personally, one of the areas that I've been focusing on for the future now is artificial intelligence and health. We now have conducted very extensive genetic testing on kids with rare genetic diseases. To this date, we've done 150,000 cases. So I like to say we've helped 150,000 kids and their families through very, very difficult times. We've also done over 1 million tests of short-term memory as a pre-indicator of dementia and Alzheimer's. So now we're taking the world of technology into the health arena, but instead of doing one person, one patient, one doctor, now we're leveraging the artificial intelligence capabilities and doing massive. So one of the things that's fascinating about all the stories we just heard, we heard about Olympics, we heard about retail, casinos, automated autonomous vehicles, we heard about drones, all here in Boca Raton, from people that created their businesses here. They thrived the businesses here, both in large corporate and as well as startup environments, and they had a passion not only for the business but for the community itself. And it's a very notable set of stories that we've created, and we thank the City of Boca Raton, we thank the Historical Society, we thank the management of the Brick for giving us the opportunity to continue to excel and contribute back to our community. Thank you.